Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week.
We certainly are.
And today we have a very special guest, Brayden Jones. Brayden is a meditation teacher, breathwork facilitator, and spiritual guide who is passionate about helping us awaken to our true nature as the loving awareness we are. He has a balanced approach that includes the non-dual pointers arising from his direct experiences of samadhi. Oh, I probably got that wrong. While honoring and attending the physical human experience and tender human heart. He loves supporting the integration of the highest wisdom into being fully human by helping his students gain the capacity and tools to feel their emotions fully, heal their trauma, and know who they are beyond their past stories. He's a certified breathwave conscious breathing facilitator and a graduate of the Mindfulness Meditation Teacher certification program under Jack Kornfield and Tara Brock. In addition to his meditation, breathwork, somatic, and energetic practices, Brayden has benefited greatly from the help of plant teachers and psychedelic medicines on his personal spiritual journey. He draws on many different teachings of awareness and love through his guidance, with a special place in his heart for the teaching of the Buddha and Jesus. He often focuses on forgiveness, compassion, and presence as gateways to freedom. Brayden does not ask you to believe anything, but instead to question everything you believe and seek sincerely, inquiring with patience, persistence, and discernment to find what is true. Brayden and his wife Jacqueline run a spiritual center in the small town of St. George, Ontario called My Heart's Path, where they run classes, hold retreats, and offer private spiritual guidance. This is an amazing growing community of people who are interested in supporting one another on the path towards greater peace. Everyone is invited and welcome to come practice with us. So welcome, Brayden. We're excited to have you on.
We sure are.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you got to where you are and what you do, those kind of things?
Sure, yeah. Do you want the long version, the medium version, or the short version?
Whatever your soul inspires you to tell us.
Yeah, I feel like I answer this question a little bit different every time I'm asked it, because we can look back at our story from so many different perspectives. But I'll see what comes through now. I guess when I was a little kid, I was very curious and I was questioning everything and always wanted to know the truth about things. And my dad tells a funny story sometimes. He says, when I was little, I asked, the movie Peter Pan with Captain Hook.
Yeah.
I was watching that. I said, Dad, what was Captain Hook's name before he lost his hand? like this kind of thing. And he's like, oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I never thought of that. So and then as time went on, and you go from that stage of believing that your parents have all the answers to everything, and then kind of going through that transition where you're like, oh, they're just human beings just like me, like oh whoa. And it's like, oh no, all the people who I thought were like running this whole thing, this world, it's like they're just humans and they don't really know what's going on either. And like, whoa.
Yeah.
The sort of the dissolution, I guess, the transition from that childlike mentality to being more I guess less naive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And through that kind of, I guess, freaked me out a lot. And it was like, wow, like what are we doing here? What's the meaning of life? What's my purpose? Who am I? Where do we come from? What happens when you die? All these questions, right?
Yeah.
Good questions.
Yeah. And so and then experiencing unpleasantness, that's a part of being human, like not knowing how to deal with my own emotions, and being conditioned to believe that it wasn't right for a man to feel or to cry or to show emotion, and not knowing how to navigate this being human. And that mixture of confusion and questions and unpleasantness, the suffering of it, eventually just propelled me onto the spiritual path. I looked down a lot of different avenues for answers, and I was raised in quite a religious family. So there were very like specific scripted answers for all the questions that I had, but those answers were never satisfying for me. It
Yeah.
was just like, that doesn't quite do it, you know? Um,
No,
and
no.
so yeah. And I gained a lot. There was a lot of value in a lot of the things I learned with my religious upbringing, but it also left me with a lot of questions. And so finally, when I found meditation, is when I felt like I kind of found something that was starting to work, and there was something there, and it was still confusing because I had a lot of preconceived notions about what spirituality was and what meditation was, a lot of misunderstandings. But slowly things started to make sense and come clear, and I had a lot of sort of mentors, friends, guides that helped me along the way that were answering the tough questions that I was asking in a way that made me more curious about the spiritual path.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'll include a couple other important parts, which is experiencing the deaths of loved ones and having that, like the deep sorrow that comes with that. That was a big part of propelling me on this journey as well.
Did you have someone
Nice.
close to you that passed away that hit you so hard, or yes?
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I used to race motorcycles, and there was a young boy who was racing against me, who I didn't know well. He was just someone that was in the race with me, and he had a crash in the race and died. And as a young boy, that was like very traumatic for me, and I had like a survivor's guilt.
Hmm.
I couldn't understand, like it seemed so unfair that this young boy beside me just dies in this race. And I thought, wow, that could have been me. And there was, all sorts, it brought up a lot. So that was an experience that stands out. And then the death of my grandparents. My grandfather was a really big one. I was there in the room with him as he passed away.
Wow.
That was a really powerful
Yeah,
experience.
that's very impactful.
Yeah, and it was kind of like touching in with the great mystery of life, like seeing him take his last breath and thinking, where is he gone? What is this? And
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 then
then
be curious.
yeah.
So even more so then,
Yeah. And then my brother and we used to do a lot of extreme sports. We still do now, but even more so years ago. And I used to do a lot of base jumping. So that's like when you run and jump off a cliff and you have a parachute on.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've ever seen wingsuiting, where you wear those, those glider suits. You jump off a mountain and you fly. And so we used to do that. It's called wingsuit base jumping.
that
And
would be so cool. I have
yeah,
parachuted, so I understand sort of the feel and how much it's so cool. Um,
yeah.
yeah, that's
And so yeah, an amazing experience and something that we really loved. And we were on a trip in Switzerland, and a friend of ours died on the trip. He fell off the cliff edge, and that was it. And we knew what we were doing was dangerous, and you always just think it won't happen to you. And a dear friend of ours. His name's Joel Harris, and he was sort of a mentor and someone that made a big impact in my life. And he died, and I think that one was kind of like the final straw that really I was like, I'm gonna get to the bottom of all these questions now.
And that's what led you on your journey then. And
Yeah,
at some point you opened your center with your wife, which is really
yeah,
cool. You can
That's
do that
very-
as a thing together.
yeah.
And so what
yeah.
kind of things do you offer at the center?
Yeah, so if we fast forward to the center, I guess after all those experiences, those are like the early things that propelled it. And then there was the time of just being in my own practice being on the journey, doing my own retreats. And yeah, my wife and I, we met, oh man, I guess it's, well, I think we started dating in 2011. I think that's when we got together initially. And so both of us were sort of, yeah, on the spiritual path together and exploring these practices, meditation and breath work, and eventually psychedelics and plant medicine ceremonies. And the things that we were uncovering through that process, the things we were experiencing, the insights were just so incredible and so life-changing. The forgiveness that was coming through, the emotions that were being released, the sort of the understanding, the compassion that was coming through. And so it felt very natural. I was so excited about it all that we wanted to share that. I wanted to share that with friends and family, and a lot of them weren't interested. Some were,
Yeah.
but I wanted them to be as excited as I was, right? and so that was an interesting phase too. Yeah, eventually Jacqueline and I took our conscious connected breathing certification through Breathwave, it's called. And yeah, we got certified as conscious breathing facilitators. And we started doing workshops and things around at different yoga studios. And we used to have classes in our basement and do one-on-one sessions with people. And I felt like it was like I found my calling, like I found what I was looking for. And
That's a nice thing.
yeah, and so in 2019, we opened our center, My Heart's Path Spiritual Center, and started offering meditation classes and breath work and retreats in a more official way. And so, yeah, that's what we do now. We have this beautiful space in St. George, and yeah, we really love it.
That's
Beautiful.
awesome.
You said psychedelics too. Did you say that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure, yeah. Psychedelics are somewhat of a confusing or touchy subject. And when I grew up with my religious upbringing, psychedelics were referred to as drugs.
Right.
Everything was just a drug, meaning it was just bad, and you just don't touch that. And so I was completely straight edge, basically my whole childhood and all high school. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't touch cannabis, nothing. And as I delved deeper into myself on the spiritual journey, I started to realize that a lot of the things I'd been taught and a lot of the things I'd been believing weren't necessarily true. They were just sort of one way of looking at things. And so this story that all drugs are bad was one of those things I started to question, especially hearing and seeing other people who had shared about impactful experiences that they'd have, like with things like psilocybin mushrooms, or cannabis, helping them with different things. And I heard of these different spiritual healing retreats, like in Peru, using ayahuasca and other psychedelic medicines, and that people were having these profound awakening experiences, feeling connected with God, and seeing themselves from a completely different perspective, and having that totally shift and transform their lives. And so another thing that I got curious about was like, wow, okay, is that true, or is it true that these things are just like evil, bad drugs? And so the only way to really know something for certain is to try it yourself. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to explore this and see. And so yeah, what both Jacqueline and I found, she had some unpleasant experiences in high school, so she was very nervous about when I brought up that as an idea. And actually, I have that similar conversation with a lot of people that say like, oh, I had a bad experience in high school with cannabis, or like, oh, I could never do that, And those experiences, yeah, they're very unpleasant when we're unconsciously using these medicines and in a maybe like a recreational setting or at a party where you're young and you don't understand what it is, and that is not what I recommend at all. And the way that we were using it was in a very conscious ceremonial way, going, traveling to these countries where they've been using these medicines for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
And they're deeply
Functioning
integrated.
well.
Yeah.
Well, I think
And
there's a difference between doing recreational drugs and then doing some of these experiences in a safe space.
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, huge difference. The difference between the safety of it, the intention behind it, the understanding behind it. And yeah, it's all very important how it's approached,
Mhm.
as far as what sort of experience you might have, and whether that's the most beautiful experience you've ever had, or the most terrible experience you've ever had. And setting the preparing yourself, setting the container, and in the best way sets us up for pleasant, beautiful, beneficial experiences. And even if the experience isn't pleasant, sometimes they aren't when you're using these sort of psychedelic medicines in a spiritual way. Sometimes it uncovers very unpleasant aspects of ourselves or of life. But when it's set up properly, then those become really important experiences that we learn a lot from, rather than how they're normally called just a bad trip, right?
Right.
Right.
More like a learning experience than to kind of go into your shadow self and explore that area of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
You hear so many people talking about taking cannabis sort of thing to help them if they're ADHD and things like that, and it calms them down and that kind of things. And the doctors now too are giving them to patients because of some of these illnesses and that they have. Do you find that that is part of what people are finding when they're with you as well?
Yeah. Well, initially, I guess these, like things like cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms, they come from the earth,
Right.
right? So these are naturally occurring substances that grow in nature, and that humans have been using for a long time. And somewhere along the line, we got a little bit confused with how to use them, and I think we got out of balance in that way. And then the governments went ahead and classified them as Schedule 1 narcotics, meaning that they have no therapeutic use whatsoever, which is just untrue. And we're starting to realize, oh, that was actually a mistake to do that, because yes, they're very powerful, and they can be misused, and they can cause harm when they're used unconsciously, so they need to be used in the right way. But to say that they have no therapeutic benefit at all is just not true. And there's actually a lot of beautiful studies being done right now. MAPS is one of the associations that are responsible for a bunch of clinical trials that are happening right now with psilocybin and with MDMA for people who have PTSD and depression. And yeah, they're finding like really incredible results, that people are being healed,
Mhm.
and that the success rates are really high. I think it's like 80%
Wow.
success. I don't know all the science offhand,
Yeah.
but
I don't either, but I watched a
That's pretty-
documentary a while back, and it was about that. It was about the psilocybin mushrooms, and it was about the MDMA, and it was really interesting, these different studies where they put these people, and it was again in a safe space where it was like they were being monitored and these things were happening, and it was amazing, the things like you said, like what it could help with.
Yeah, and it's very helpful for people with addictions as well.
I would think so.
There's a particular plant medicine called iboga, and it's really useful for curing opioid addictions, alcoholism, And so not only are these things, not drugs, like in the classic sense of how we usually use that word with a negative connotation, but they're in some ways like an anti-drug. Like they're actually, instead of bringing us further away from ourselves and creating more disconnection and creating more trauma, they're doing the opposite. They're bringing us closer to ourselves, bringing more compassion and understanding, shining a light on all of our unconscious wounds, helping us to feel and heal. And it's incredible. So
Yes, I can imagine.
So
yeah.
then because I don't know a lot about it. I mean, it's popping up more and more, and
is, it
I
is.
follow this one. It's actually an indigenous group close to Bragg Creek, Alberta, and they do a psilocybin ceremony. And so then is it like a one and done kind of thing, or is this something that you partake on more than one time, depending on what's going on in your life, what you want to achieve spiritually?
Good question.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I think it really depends on a lot of things. In their clinical trials, I believe they were doing 3 ceremonies with psilocybin spaced out with therapy and other sort of self-awareness practices. And that's what they were having really good results with was the 3 sessions. And they were finding that, I'm pretty sure I'm saying this correctly, that they were finding that after those 3 sessions that the healing was sticking, and that people didn't need to return to, to be like, to continue to use the medicine over and over. I do know quite a few people who have had one experience that's been profoundly impactful for them, and then they haven't felt the need to have any more ceremonies after that.
Okay.
In my case, I've had a bit of a different experience. I've had many experiences, and I continue to have experiences from time to time, and it feels like there's always more to learn about myself, and there's always ways that I can be more peaceful and more loving and show up for the people in my life with more to give, with more presence.
Yeah.
And that I always learn something more in that way. And so, yeah, I think there's many different ways that we can use the medicines, and that it's important for each person to sort of check in with their why they're using it, and what they're hoping to get out of it, and to do it in a really, I guess, conscious way.
Yeah, I think that I like that because it has been around for so long, and especially in some of these South American countries, but it's so ritualistic. And I think that's the part that I like about it, right? It's not just here, we're going to do this and see where you go. There's that ritual to it, which I think I'm in favor of that.
Well, yeah, some kind of,
Yeah. So it's done with intention and
Yeah.
integrity and care and humility and all these qualities that are important for having and these experiences can be very destabilizing, because it's really deconstructing our reality, what we believe is true, the thoughts and beliefs that we hold so tightly about who we are and what life is. And so yeah, it's not normally something that you would want to do too often. It's you need time to integrate that experience, and hopefully for it to actually impact your life, rather than just be a past experience and you go, wow, that was crazy, I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah.
But to actually, and there's more and more integration coaches popping up, which are specially trained people to speak with you about your psychedelic experience, about your ceremony, and help bring those insights into your life, and to actually make physical changes in your life, so that the ceremony is not in vain.
Mhm.
So when you do it, do you have a different, like a set atmosphere that you have around it? Do you walk them through it, like when talking to them while they do it, when they start taking it? Like, how does it work for you that you do it in your sort of your business? Like, do you start talking to them while they're doing it, walk them through it, so maybe they have the nicest of visit sort of thing? I don't know how else to say that. Way through it, like, so you're coaching them every minute you're with them.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to approach this work. And the way that I like to approach it with my own personal practice is by first doing some journaling and getting really clear about what it is that I'm up to. Why do I want to do this? What am I hoping to get out of it?
Okay.
And then really good facilitators, practitioners will have a screening, so that there's a medical screening, and there's health questionnaire, so that we see, is this right for me?
Okay.
Am I in good health? It's psychedelic medicines are certainly not for everybody, and there's certain mental health conditions that don't mix well with psychedelics. So good practitioners will do a thorough screening for all of those sort of things.
Good.
And then there are really good tips for ways to prepare your body and mind to receive a particular medicine.
That's going to be one of my questions. So.
Yeah. So depending on which medicine it is that you're taking, will depend on, what sort of diet you need to follow, and what sort of lifestyle tips. Usually resting and meditating, bringing awareness into your body through conscious breathing or yoga, taking care of yourself and getting yourself into a most healthy, stable, and open, trusting state possible, so that when you receive this medicine that can bring up a lot of different emotions or sensations, that you feel like you have space to be with that you are, and in a space where you can be with that. So yeah, there's very thorough preparation that can be done, to approach these ceremonies in the best way. And each different practitioner sort of has their own way of doing that.
Yeah.
And,
Beautiful.
And so then when you partake in a ceremony, then there's obviously some follow-up, and I would imagine it's like similar to how you set up for it with the journaling and the resting and the reflection and those kind of things, drinking water, probably still trying to eat whole good foods, stay away from substances that probably aren't the best for us anyways.
yeah, exactly. All of those things are great things to do after. So yeah, there's usually the phases of an experience like this are the preparation, the initiation, which is the ceremony, the experience, and then the integration, which is, everything that happens after. And the preparation and the integration are just as important as the initiation. And we need to be really conscious about the way that we engage with each of those phases. And so for the integration, yeah, it's really good to have your life set up in a way that you will have time and space in order to process and integrate whatever you experienced. And so if your life is really busy and you have a lot of responsibilities, it's nice to sort of pause as many of those as possible to create space to, because we don't know how we'll feel after an experience. You never know what you'll experience. Sometimes you feel energized, renewed, full of love, and it seems like integration is easy, and it's just like, wow, life is so amazing and so beautiful, and I feel like my cup is so full, I have so much to give. And then other times it can be the opposite. It can be like, wow, I'm so tired and drained, and maybe a lot of unconscious, unresolved material was brought up to the surface. Maybe a lot of old hurt that hasn't been felt. And that can be overwhelming. And
Yeah,
so
you can.
so yeah, having a good integration setup where you do things like eating well, taking care of yourself, taking rest, having some free time for yourself, and having a support system of trusted friends, mentors, teachers that you can speak with and feel supported by. And there's a whole bunch of practices that you can do that can help depending on what it is that you're experiencing.
Beautiful. Wow, you sure have described a lot to me. So I'm thinking that what you've done is describe to our listeners how they can be comfortable with it, feel like it's a safe thing to do, safe place to go. And, you know, and it's going to open it up more so for you and for others to experience this, to find what they're trying to do to make them better, right? And that's what we're supposed to be about, is helping people find out where they can get what they need to find them, to make them come home to themselves, sort of thing, and be blissful with themselves. So
what would you suggest then to people if they were looking to experience something like this? I know that it's a touchy kind of subject as far as finding, you know, I mean, I think the only reason I found the Indigenous is because it was an Indigenous group, right? But what would you suggest to people if this is something that they would like to experience? What's the best way to go about it? Like,
good question.
Yeah, it's a tricky question because, like you said, it's a bit of a touchy subject because most of these substances are still illegal, which is very sad. And there's a process being undergone right now, you know, like MAPS doing the clinical trials, going through all the right avenues to prove that these medicines, when used properly, can be safe and effective. And so hopefully that keeps going that way. But for now, because a lot of them are illegal, we don't offer them. And it's hard to find, right?
I bet.
And so it's not something that I ever tell that anybody should do. I just try to offer what my experience has been so that if you feel called, that you can go about it in a safe way. And we always tell people, you know, discuss with your doctor and do your own research and all that sort of stuff. And then to answer the question, I guess, as best as I can, is to find someone who's had the experience that you can ask a whole bunch of questions to. And there are sort of underground networks of people doing this work around. If you travel out of the country, you can find legal retreat centers that are offering this type of work that can be really excellent. And it's always important to, ask a million questions and make sure that when you go to have this experience, that you know who is serving you the medicine, you know what they're serving you, and that you feel safe and you feel like you're in a nice environment where you'll be able to surrender and let go to actually have your experience. Because if we're trying to retain a sense of control in the physical environment, then it's very hard to have a positive experience.
Yeah.
So we want to be in a space where we trust that we're taken care of, and that we trust the sort of experience and knowledge of the people who are serving us, so that we can really surrender, really let go. That's where the deep healing comes in. So it's really important with this sort of like renaissance of psychedelics that's happening, that we all go about it in the most conscious way possible. So
right.
That's
stepping into it lightly, right? We're doing that research, because I think for myself, if that was something I chose to do, I feel like, I'd want to know that whoever I was
working with,
being in this ceremony or partaking of it, is somebody that I feel like I could trust, that I'm in a safe space, like you said. And I know, I know like in the more South America and some of those countries, this is just something that they do and have done for years and years. Not, I assume that there's some legality to it there that they can do this, or
Mhm.
Yeah.
for
It's,
Yeah.
different plays anyway.
so I'm glad that, you know, we do have these groups that are advocating for this, to look at it and be able to present this to the government to say, hey, like, there's some legit
Oh,
stuff
heads up.
behind this.
Heads up, guys.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And there's really amazing retreat centers in places like Costa Rica and Peru, and there are a few legal options in Canada as well, if you know where to look. And
Okay.
there are some ayahuasca churches that have been granted exemptions to use ayahuasca as their sacrament for
Wow.
healing and for, you know, connecting with the divine. And so the government is recognizing that there is a religious use for these, which is awesome, because I think that religious freedom is important.
Mhm.
But it goes beyond religion too, where people need these alternative medicines for therapeutic healing, for physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing. And so hopefully it keeps going in the direction that it is, and
I hope
it
so.
becomes more available for people to have safe experiences. Because what it does when it's illegal is everything just goes underground, and it becomes sometimes more sketchy or difficult to
Absolutely.
find the right places and the right people and all that. So yeah, well, I certainly don't have the answers, but I know that these medicines have been absolutely, you know, life changing for me and my wife. So yeah.
Very intriguing to me, because it just feels like it's, yeah, it just feels like it's a different option, right? And I agree with you, because when it gets, anything that gets shoved underground does become more sketchy, and you're don't know who. So I loved that you said that, right? Researching these people and making sure that
Mhm.
they are the ones, and asking all the questions, because, you know,
Sure.
any question you can have, right? Of, what do I need to know? How am I going to feel? How's this going to affect me? What's, you know,
Yeah, and a lot of the times I think that because these experiences are so out of the norm for our society, that people that are interested maybe don't even know what to ask. And so that can be there's actually some resources that I can leave with you guys,
yeah,
so
that'd be
that they
great.
That'd be
they
great
can be
'cause we're
shared, where
right,
um, yeah, it takes you, it's like, oh yeah, what should I even be considering? You know,
right.
what should I even, I don't know what to ask someone, because I don't know anything about it. I'm just interested. And so I have some resources that can be helpful for that.
Yeah, I would love that, because we'll put them in our show notes, and then if people want to do the research and that's an avenue they want to
They can do that.
investigate, then they have those
Mhm.
options. Yeah, it was very, very interesting. Like, I've heard about it, and it's kind of creeping up here and there.
It
And
is.
I've
Here it
taken
is.
some master classes just like on the computer, where people are talking about the different forms of the psychedelics, and because I find it interesting
Me
and
too.
intriguing, and especially when you see what some of the results can be from it to help people. So
Yeah.
I thank you for sharing your
Well, very
experience
much.
with us, because that's great. And can you tell everybody where to find you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm happy to share, and I'm glad that you are doing what you're doing, and that you
Thank
guys are
you.
interested in sharing this sort of stuff. So thank
Okay,
you for that.
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at My Heart's Path Spiritual Center, and our website is myheartspath.com. Those are the two best places to find us. And yeah, if there's anyone listening that feels interested in what we do, send us an email. Come check out our conscious breathing or our meditation classes. We have hot cold therapy
Oh,
going
nice.
on at our space. Yeah, we have a wood
Nice.
burning sauna, and we have different fun events going on as well, like ecstatic dances and
Oh, nice.
yeah, different community things taking place. So yeah, check us out.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I will. That's
definitely.
great.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and getting to know you a little bit, and
Yeah,
I
I hope we can talk again in the future too, and maybe get a little more involved with how you do it, or maybe, I don't know, walk us through it a bit or whatever, something like that. It'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yes, well,
Hey.
thank you. And we will see everybody next week.
We sure will.